Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you 10 things that I wish I knew before I became a minimalist. I want to get the first one on this list right out of the way immediately because I think it's so important. The most important thing I learned, maybe not the most important thing, but a crucial thing. Don't call yourself a minimalist. I don't call myself a minimalist for the sole reason that I don't think it's an identity in and of itself. I think minimalism is a tool that we use to create an intentional life. And so calling yourself a minimalist to me doesn't, I get it, but it's not a one size fits all. And that's actually point number two I'll get to in a second. But that's why I would say don't label yourself as a minimalist. You're going to try and fit yourself into a box that doesn't really exist. If you're new here, by the way, my name's Amanda and I make videos all about simple and intentional living. And so let's jump right into number two on this list. And that is that minimalism isn't a one size fits all. That's why I suggest you don't call yourself a minimalist, because you'll find yourself trying to fit into an identity that doesn't really have a definition. When I first started embracing and pursuing minimalism over 5 years ago now, I had this idea of what it looked like in my head. A lot of this came from Marie Kondo's series, the Netflix series she came out with, and this was when she was really popular and this whole concept of decluttering became popular. But I had this idea at the time that minimalism had to look a certain way, and to be a minimalist, you had to check off certain boxes. And I've learned that that's just not the case. I've learned that minimalism is actually a very personal thing, and it differs from person to person. It's not necessarily about living in an empty space or having no possessions or very little possessions. It's essentially about finding what you value and eliminating the rest. The third thing that I wish I knew sooner was that embracing a more minimalist lifestyle is a gradual process. It is not going to be an overnight transformation. I was so motivated after watching Marie Kondo's series. I thought, I can do this. I can declutter my whole home in one weekend and completely transform my life. 5 years and many YouTube videos later, I think I have proven that that is not the case. And that's okay. It's okay if this process takes you weeks or months or even years, honestly. Because as you're going through the process, it's not just clearing up your house and decluttering your house and getting things kind of in order. You're going through the process of figuring out what actually matters to you and the kind of life you want to live. And that doesn't always reveal itself to you in a weekend or in a week. Fourth thing that I wish I knew was that you're not going to be able to declutter all of the emotional clutter that you're holding on to just by decluttering the physical clutter. I know that for myself early on in this process, I almost only focused on the physical, tangible clutter. But as I was going along, I realized there was a lot of emotional clutter that was weighing me down too. So you might find that as you go through this physical decluttering, you're going to come across and have to deal with a lot of emotional clutter. And to give you one example of something that I dealt with personally, I had a hard time letting go of items that were gifted to me or handed down to me because I felt guilty about the fact that somebody gave this to me and they spent their money on it, or it was valuable to them and they passed it on to me. And that was something I had to deal with, because otherwise I'd be holding on to everything. And I had a lot of stuff given to me, a lot of gifts, a lot of hand-me-downs. And the guilt and the people-pleasing in myself that I had to deal with was some emotional clutter. And when I got to a point where I realized that I don't have to keep anything that I don't want to, that doesn't serve me or my family, but instead just set up boundaries for the future. And so maybe let people know. Like, I've had to have a conversation with my mom many times about not giving me so much stuff for my children all the time, because I've got 4 kids and it can accumulate really quickly. And while she means well, it doesn't serve us well as a family to continuously have a lot of stuff coming into the home. And so having those conversations and setting boundaries going forward has helped me to part with a lot of things that maybe I was holding on to for the wrong reasons, and also just allowed this weight to be lifted from me going forward. So just know that there is a lot of emotional clutter that you will have to deal with as you're going through the physical clutter. I wish I knew that earlier on. Fifth thing that I wish I knew is that minimalism and your pursuit of minimalism doesn't mean that you are sacrificing any joy or comfort. If anything, I think it's the opposite. Initially, a lot of people think that minimalism is too restrictive or involves a lot of sacrifice, but I think it ultimately leads, like I said, to more joy and more comfort, because you begin to focus on the quality of things in your life over the quantity. And by beginning this process of letting go of all that excess, you will start to be able to highlight and enjoy the things in your life that actually matter to you. All right, number 6. I wish I knew, I should have expected this. You're going to face some resistance from friends and family. Not everyone is going to understand your pursuit of a more minimalist lifestyle. The first thing I want to say about that is that that's okay. Not everybody has to understand why you're choosing to do something that you're doing. If it's serving and benefiting you and your life and your family's lives, that's the most important thing, first and foremost. You might have family members or friends who are kind of confused as to why you're choosing to live the way you're living and the boundaries that you've set, especially when you have children and there's a lot of gift giving involved with birthdays and holidays. And sometimes it's awkward and uncomfortable to deal with those conversations and have those conversations with family and friends. But ultimately, come at it from a place of patience yourself and understanding yourself that this is not the norm. This is not what culture promotes or encourages by any means. And so a lot of people might not understand it. And I think the best that we can do is to just explain to our family and friends why we choose to do things the way we do, and just hope that they, maybe even though it's not necessarily for them, that they at least understand that it's something that benefits our lives, and to share that with them and how it benefits our lives, and maybe help them to understand that. I think I was so excited early on in this process about embracing this type of lifestyle that I kind of didn't even think about the fact that my family might have something to say about this. They might be a little bit confused as to why I'm getting rid of things and decluttering perfectly good stuff. So it's something that you might have to deal with in the process, and that's definitely something I wish I was more ready for before I kind of embarked on this whole pursuit of minimalism. Seventh thing that I wish I had known earlier is that minimalism is about intentionality, not just decluttering. I was all about the decluttering in the early stages, but it is so much more about intentionality, because ultimately the goal here isn't to just own less. That just happens as a part of the process. You'll ultimately end up owning less, but that's not the goal. The goal is about living more intentionally. And usually in that process, you end up owning less, but that's not the goal. Will you get rid of physical possessions by decluttering? Yes. But as you embrace minimalism, you'll find that you are more intentional with your time, you are more intentional with your energy, you are more intentional with how you spend your money. The last few videos that I've been posting on this channel have been more faith-based, and that is something that I came to through minimalism. I deepened my relationship with God through minimalism. I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't simplify my life, if I didn't really evaluate the possessions in my life, the clutter in my life, emotionally and physically, to allow the space for my faith to grow in the way that it has. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm so thankful for minimalism for that reason. And so I think if you start from the beginning understanding that this is about creating an intentional life and not just about owning less stuff, you'll kind of be a few steps ahead right from the get-go. Number 8, I wish I would have realized that you really don't need as much stuff as you think you do. I used to think that I needed stuff, that I just needed stuff for all different kinds of needs. That's why I had such a hard time early on decluttering, because I felt I had a need for everything. All of my things served some sort of purpose, whether it was like an immediate need or a future need, keeping all of these things because what if, or one day, and I just justified hanging on to everything. Over time, as I forced myself and pushed myself to declutter things that really didn't serve an immediate need in my life, I began to realize how little I actually needed those things. And in turn, it helped me to appreciate the stuff that actually did add value to my life. Number 9, minimalism will change your consumerist habits. I think that's just an inevitable thing that happens. I didn't really think about it early on when I started decluttering and taking this stuff on. I had no idea it would impact how I spend my money or how I just consume in general, how I even look at things now when I'm scrolling on social media. I'm just not influenced the same way anymore. As you go through this process of letting go of so many physical things, it really helps you to take a step back when you go to purchase something and really give it a lot more thought than you used to. It almost, in my experience, doesn't even take much effort. I think the more you let go of, the more mindful you become of the stuff that you do purchase or the stuff that you do bring into your home, because you've just seen the effect of letting go of so much stuff. And as you're letting go of that stuff, you're starting to recognize how much money you wasted, how much of these things just didn't serve any purpose or really add any value to your life. And as soon as you go to purchase something now, after having gone through this process for a little bit of time, you really think about it. You don't just mindlessly consume anymore. Number 10, the final thing that I'll share is that, and I'm sure this sounds very cliche, but minimalism isn't about perfection. And if you're a perfectionist by nature, it's a very hard thing to sometimes do and go through this process of expecting it to have an end result or give you a certain result, and if it doesn't happen in a certain time frame the way you want it to, it's kind of like, well, forget the whole thing. That's how I thought early on. I'm like, I watched a half-hour episode of Marie Kondo's series. I'm like, look at the beginning. They did everything, they went through all the steps, and by the end, everything was perfect. That's not really how it works. And that's why I say don't call yourself a minimalist, because there's not really this end goal of minimalism. There's not going to be this like picture perfect life that's going to be achieved when you start decluttering and going through this process. It's not about that perfect life. It's about the progress that you're making to live more intentionally. I just want to encourage you to, if you're watching this because you're new to minimalism or this whole concept, that you can do it and go about it in your own way and at your own pace. Just remember that it's about living more meaningfully and not perfectly. If you have been on a minimalism journey for a while, or this is just something that you've been kind of embracing yourself for a while, I would love it if you would share in the comments about any experiences you've had with minimalism or challenges that you've had. Thank you so much for being here today and spending this time with me. I will see you in my next video.